Most of what you think you know about the Vikings was invented by people who never met one, and I can prove it with a costume designer, a bar of soap, and one of the oldest parliaments on Earth. But first, we need to talk about the most successful piece of historical fake news ever sold. Let's start with the horns. Because if you picture a Viking right now, you're probably seeing a warrior with two giant horns strapped to his head. That man is a costume. Germany, 1876, Bayreuth. Richard Wagner is staging Der Ring des Nibelungen. He needs armor that reads as mythic power from the back row. He turns to Carl Emil Dupler, a costume designer, and Dupler has a problem. Viking archaeology is still young, scattered, and stubbornly uncinematic, so he borrows. He finds images of horned helmets, but they aren't Viking battle gear. They're Bronze Age ceremonial headpieces worn in ritual long before the Viking Age begins. Dopler looks at his warrior sketch, too plain, too human, so he draws the horns, and he creates a monster the world will never stop believing in. The opera hits, the image spreads, artists copy it, publishers print it, and within a generation, the Viking is born as a horned silhouette. There's only one problem. Those horned helmets come from a world around 1700 BC. The Viking Age is centuries after 800 AD. That is a gap measured in millennia. Using Bronze Age ritual horns to prove Viking battle helmets is like sending a modern marine onto a beach in Normandy wearing a Roman centurion's crest. Now listen to the iron. Archaeologists have found fragments and pieces, but there's only one substantially complete Viking Age helmet we can put on the table and argue over with confidence. The Gjermundbu helmet, excavated in Norway in 1943. No horns, just an iron bowl with a spectacle guard around the eyes. Practical, made to survive a blow. Because horns in combat do one thing very well. They give the enemy something to grab. A sword strike that should glance off your helmet catches on a horn instead. The force transfers into your neck. Your intimidation becomes leverage. The only place you reliably find a Viking in a horned helmet is the opera house, and he's probably singing soprano. So yes, the horns are a lie. But they're also the small lie, because Hollywood didn't just get the helmet wrong. They got the man underneath it backwards. Hold fast. If they can sell you a fake helmet, they can sell you a fake soul. In every film, they're covered in mud and blood, teeth rotting, hair matted. The assumption is simple. Barbarians don't bathe. Except the Norse had a reputation for grooming and regular washing that made their neighbors uneasy. Here's your proof. It's embedded in the calendar. In Old Norse, Saturday is Laugardagur. In Icelandic, Laugardagur. Swedish, lørdag. Danish, lørdag. The root word is lag, bath, pool, hot spring. Saturday is bathing day. It was a custom. While some Christians treated frequent bathing with suspicion, the Norse kept a weekly washing ritual. Hot water, soap made with lye, combs, razors. And yes, you heard that right. Christian Europe was suspicious of bathing. Some monks argued that washing the body was vanity, a sin of the flesh. They believed suffering through filth brought you closer to God. Unfortunately for them, during the raids, the Vikings could smell the Christian armies coming from a mile away. Then the story turned sharp. The Anglo-Saxons noticed, and some of them were furious because the Danes weren't filthy. A 13th century St. Albans chronicle, often linked to John of Wallingford, complains that the Danes combed their hair every day, bathed every Saturday, and changed their garments often. If a Viking were to visit St. Albans, they better be holding an axe, because after one inhalation, they're going straight to Valhalla. For the doubters, archaeology backs these claims. Viking graves are loaded with grooming tools, combs carved from antler, tweezers, razors, and my favorite, because it tells you how seriously they took appearances, is the ear spoon, a tool made for cleaning wax out of your ears. A man can cross the sea to kill you, and he still makes time to clean his ears. Does that sound like a man too primitive for a bath? Now people will bring up Ibn Fadlan, Arab diplomat, 922 AD. He called the Rus the filthiest of God's creatures, but pay attention to what he actually describes. Every morning, a slave girl brings a basin of water. The leader washes his face, combs his hair, blows his nose, spits. Then the basin is passed to the next man. Ibn Fadlan is disgusted, not because they don't wash, but because they share the water. He is writing from a culture of ritual cleanliness using running water, so read his revulsion properly. These men were washing, grooming, and presenting themselves every single day. Nothing terrifies a moralist like a rival who shows up clean. So yes, they were groomed, they cared about status, which should make you wonder what else was deliberate. Because in battle, Hollywood insists they were animals, mindless rage machines. Not even close, clean hands can still hold an axe. 2 myths down. Now we walk to the battle line, where discipline matters more than fury. The berserker, frothing at the mouth, tripping out on a berserker steroid stack of mead, henbane, fasting and hyperventilation rituals, induced sweating, ice baths. Wait, am I still talking about berserkers or the modern spiritual bro? Anyways, great cinema, terrible history, because the real Viking battle line was held with terrifying discipline. Yes, the sources describe berserkers, but they're remarkable precisely because they're highly specialized elite shock troops, bodyguards, men with reputations that travel ahead of them. And when that reputation spilled beyond its role, it was punished. The backbone of Norse battlefield success was formation. Skjaldborg, the shield wall, warriors standing shoulder to shoulder, round shields overlapping into a barrier, spears bristling over the top. The front rank pushes, the back ranks brace. The line breathes as one body, a test of discipline. If one man breaks, the line collapses. If one man falls, the gap must close instantly. And when they needed to break an enemy line, later sources describe a wedge they called the svinfylking, the boar's snout. Veterans at the tip, heavier armor forward, meant to punch a hole and widen it. The svinfylking was the speciality of the Jofur, warriors that channeled the boar. Click the pop-up card to watch my video on them to learn more. Now, whether every band drilled it is beside the point. You don't even imagine a wedge if you think war is just screaming and luck. Even their enemies understood this. The poem The Battle of Maldon, describing a fight against Vikings in 991 AD, tells defenders to hold formation. Mind must be harder, heart the keener, spirit the greater, as our strength diminishes. This emphasizes the Viking army wasn't a bar brawl. If you charged out alone to be a hero, you didn't get glory, you got buried. Disciplined, clean, professional. So if they weren't mindless, then surely they were at least uniform, a single pagan, heathen, uncivilized people, right? Wrong. Being Viking could be something you became. You wore the gear, you spoke the words, you married in, you took the oaths, you were counted. And why would locals adopt Norse identity? Because the Norse were connectors. Trade runs like a nervous. The Marvel Viking is a tall blonde man from Scandinavia, pure Nordic lineage. But there's a problem with that image. Viking wasn't a bloodline. It was an activity, a culture you could enter. A landmark genetic study led by Willerslev analyzed the genomes of 442 Viking Age individuals from across Europe. The simplest takeaway is this: the Viking world had considerable movement, mixing. People with different ancestries living in Scandinavia and people with Scandinavian ancestry living far from it. Real Vikings looked like what you get when you live by ships, and the most uncomfortable evidence is buried in the graves. In Orkney, 2 men were buried with Viking weapons and Viking-style honors, but genetically they look like the local populations of the British Isles, not like recent Scandinavians. On the island of Helgö, a trading site that predates the height of the Viking Age, archaeologists found a small bronze Buddha made far from Scandinavia centuries earlier. At Birka, a ring was found with Kufic Arabic script invoking Allah, and Scandinavian hoards contained vast quantities of Islamic silver coins, dirhams, carried north through trade, tribute, and plunder, worth millions in today's currency. These men made the edge into a highway, so no, they weren't pure. If they were organized enough to trade, organized enough to form armies, organized enough to spread a culture, then why do we keep calling them lawless? The final myth says Vikings settled disputes with axes, not arguments. Might made right, except they didn't just have laws, they had lawyers, and those lawyers could ruin you. Around 930, settlers in Iceland established the Althing at Thingvellir, an annual assembly often cited among the oldest national parliaments in the world. Every year, chieftains and farmers gathered to settle disputes, make laws, arrange alliances, and keep feuds from devouring the island. At the center stood the Lögberg, the law rock, and on it stood the Lögsmaður, the law speaker. He was paid to do something totally inconceivable. Remember the law, then speak it. Sorry, may the All-Father bless me with better jokes next time. Anyways, tradition holds he recited portions of the law code from memory each year because paper was scarce and memory was authority. You want proof they were obsessed with law? Read Njal's saga. The hero isn't the strongest fighter. He's the best legal mind. A man praised for solving problems with procedure when other men reach for steel. The saga is a courtroom drama written in ashen blood, lawsuits, settlements, arbitration, and when violence breaks out, it's often because a legal settlement fails. Even killing had rules, compensation, a set price in silver based on status, meant to stop revenge from becoming an endless chain. And if you refused the settlement, outlawry, to be cut from the law was to be cut from humanity. You could be killed without penalty because the law had already pronounced you dead. Even their duels were regulated. Holmgang is what they called a duel for settling disputes. A hide laid on the ground marked with poles, 3 shields each, rules about stepping off, forfeiting. Sometimes the fight ended with first blood. Sometimes it ended with a body. They turned violence into procedure, because uncontrolled violence ruins inheritance, alliances, and trade. This isn't anarchy. This is a litigious society trying to keep the wolf at the door by writing the wolf's name into law. So no horned helmets from the battlefield, not filthy, not mindless, not pure, not lawless. Every myth we've been fed is designed to make them simple, because a dirty savage with an axe is a monster. But a well-groomed, disciplined fighter with a mind for law and a sword, that's a conqueror. And all of this, the grooming, the formations, the trade networks, the law codes, it served something bigger. Because the Vikings were believers, and next time we'll talk about what they believed. Specifically, the god who hung himself from a tree to steal the secrets of the universe. Odin. And trust me, he's nothing like the friendly wizard pop culture sold you. He has only one demand: Obedience. Like and join as a member to support our exploration of mythology, the gods and warriors of the past.